Morning, respected director, sir, fellow colleagues, respected faculty members from IT, management and engineering, dear students. It's my pleasure to welcome today Mr. Vaneet Chadha, who is working as the director of style Premia, Volatility Management with Franklin Templeton Multi-Asset Solutions, and he's based in San Francisco Bay Area, USA. And today we are very happy and lucky to interact with Mr. Vaneet Chadha, who would be sharing with us his rich experience and his lifetime learnings with the students of different domains, which are MBA, BTech, and BCA. And let me give a very short brief of Mr. Vaneet Chadha. And he has been the pride of Jalandhar. He has been the gold medalist from pre-nursery to his masters. And he always secured first position from nursery to 12th, and then in 2001, he secured rank 13 in the Punjab CET, the Common Engineering Test, and later on he did his BTech from Delhi College, the prestigious Delhi College of Engineering, and then he moved on to the USA, where he completed his Masters of Science, which is specialization in quantitative and computational finance from the Georgia Institute of Technology, again with the gold medal, and he has worked with brands like ST Microelectronics and Citadel Investment Group. Currently, he is working with Franklin Templeton, which is a very well-known brand in the markets, financial markets. And today we are very lucky to have Mr. Vaneet Chadha with amongst us. And sir, we have here amongst the participants, we have the students from BTech class, BCA class, BBA, BCom, and MBA. So we have a good mix of the students from different segments. And we would love to hear what you want to tell us regarding the financial markets and data analytics. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Sandeep, Dr. Sandeep, for having me, and all the management as well who kindly accepted me having here to just be able to speak to the students. It's always a pleasure, talking to the students who are, I think, the future of any nation. So obviously, I think I'm really excited to speak to you all. And thank you, Sandeep, for such a flattering introduction. I think I probably deserve less of the credit. I think, yeah, like I always I feel that there's a lot of luck and chance involved in any journey or any story for all of us. So definitely admit that I had my own share of luck as well. So what I was thinking today was, I apologize. I don't have like a deck here today. I thought that because you're students, and I've had some conversations with students in US here as well. Usually what I do is I make it an interactive round of discussion, and I use some of the research which we at industry review, and which is very interesting to us, which is helpful to just stimulate your brain, make you think, make you curious, and hopefully even inculcate interest in you. I know this is a broader group. I think not a lot of you probably have interest in finance. I think the data analytics is probably more of your interest, if I understand from what Dr. Sandeep told me about this. But I feel like, given my selfish interest in my own, financial journey, I will obviously do try to stimulate you more about the finance. And again, this conversation I'm having today, it's more on a personal front. I think I'm not really, just a disclaimer that I'm not really representing Franklin Templeton today. It's more, I think, more my personal interest, and that I do even in schools and some of these college universities in US as well. So with that, is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, okay. Yes, Vaneet, it is visible.
Okay, great. So what we'll do is, I hope that so students have a chance to interrupt me and ask questions. I hope, is that right?
Yes, and we encourage all the students, dear students, and wherever you have anything to discuss with Mr. Vaneet, you can just raise your hand or write something in the chat box.
Yeah, I think so. One thing I wanted to just clarify that, I think there's no this material I'm going to cover today, and I have two papers, and I think I hope that you have the papers. If you don't, we can send you after this call as well. Those two papers are publicly available, and more about, I think this is more about brainstorming discussion, and more questions you ask, the better I think it will be. I'm definitely not going to do a one way presentation here. So okay, let me start with so Cliff Asness is one of the very premier names in quantitative investing in US, and he wrote this paper. It's actually not a very new paper. It's actually written in 2014 in the CFA Institute Financial Analyst Journal, and I think his paper was named my top 10 peeves. Now peeves is usually, even I had to Google it, because when I first time I read it a few years ago, I didn't know what a peeve is. So peeve is like annoyance, like some thing which annoys you. And so his top 10 peeves, I think I feel like there's a lot in this paper which you don't find in and it's not even dry actually. It's very I think it's very interesting, at least to me, and hopefully you'll find it interesting too. So I was thinking that I'll just have those peeves. I'll discuss a couple of these, see if it stimulates a little bit of discussion here, and for management as well. I think I welcome you all as well, so not just students, but Sandeep, Dr. Bagga, Dr. Kulwant, any of the faculty and the management also. Please feel free to ask questions and give your thoughts.
So my
So let's
advice
start
to,
with,
sir, sorry to interrupt, my advice to all the attendees and faculty members, you can put your questions in a Q&A rather than the chat box in question and answer session, and later on all the panelists, they can take various questions from all the stakeholders, so that can be well answered by Vaneet.
Sure. So Q&A is where we can go. Is that where you are pointing to, Dr. Bagga?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So let's start with volatility. So I think the data, we have another paper which if we get time, we can go there as well. So data is obviously a big point of discussion in every industry today. Needless to say, you have starting with automotive, starting with technology, starting with the bigger retail industries, the technology, the lot of sectors and industries. I think data is becoming more and more important, and I think that it's not just a buzzword to me. I think that actually a lot of businesses are information businesses. So if you imagine a asset management business for a second, because I am in asset management industry for almost 15 years now. So I think if you think about asset management industry, it is an information business. What are we doing? We are selecting stocks or ETFs or funds, and we are trying to build a solution for the clients to give them better risk-adjusted returns over a period of time. So how do we make that decision? It is driven by the data, and sometimes I think that it can be a quantitative only. So you can just make that decision based on data only. Sometimes it can be qualitative, where you can actually talk to the management. You can have a certain certain view of how the world is going to look like in future, and based on that you may have a certain investment strategy to invest for future. And then the third one, which I think is more commonplace, is a mix of that. So a hybrid approach where you use certain data as a quantitative tool, and then you also have certain qualitative views which you combine with it. So either way, I think the data is a center. It has become more and more center of the asset management industry. We have more and more needs. So when we started in this industry, we had certainly some of the balance sheets, some of the income statements for the business level financial statement level data, but then it extended to more alternative data sets. Obviously macro is becoming a bigger part as well. So, thinking about the GDP of the country, thinking about inflation of the country, and then that GDP inflation, there are a lot of leading indicators. You can think of, some of the stats, which, the PPI, like the producer price index, some of the leading indicator data which the governments or the industry publishes. So one example is, I think a lot of things I will tell you today is probably um, more suited to US, but hopefully India has some implications as well. So a lot of the retail stores in US, for example, they release their monthly sales data of how the sales have been in a given month. Like an auto company would actually publish a sales number each month as well. So a lot of this data, which is actually more and more becoming higher frequency, uh, it can easily make you get lost in the data. So you obviously have to not just process the data, have the data, but also make sense of it. What are you going to do with that data? And that's where the data analytics becomes a distinguishing strength for businesses. And again, I'm talking about asset management, but it obviously is a big deal. Starting with Google, I know most of you probably have interacted with Google. Now, if you think about Google, it is it is one software or one service. I don't even know what to call it actually anymore. It has tentacles in every aspect of your life, and I think you don't realize how much data behind the scene they're gathering for you on your behalf, and then actually making it intelligent recommendations to you. You can think about music. You can think about YouTube probably, where you have a lot of videos you see, and it will give you a new recommended video based on certain algorithms it runs behind the scene. The search, obviously, search is the bread and butter. More than 80-90% of the revenue comes from the search, and that's where when you search something, um, the the a lot of their algorithms actually over time become more and more intelligent on what link are you going to click on, and that link becomes more popular. So it's kind of like they call it a flywheel, kind of flywheel where as thing becomes more and more worthy, more and more people click it, it becomes more and more valuable. So it will obviously rank higher and higher in the rank search algorithm, and it will show up higher and higher in your Google search. So that is actually one example which is a very, very stale example, by the way. I know probably some of you may think that it's so arcane in a lot of people's minds, but I feel like to me that's a unique way. At least when I started thinking about data, I was really, really fascinated by how Google created their search engine, and how they really became integrated in a lot of our lives. So similar to what Google has done, I think what asset management industry is also doing is trying to anticipate, what exactly, where are the businesses going. And I think this person, Cliff Asness, which I have in front of you, I think he always thinks about these things which are annoyances to him. And so volatility, let's start volatility. What is a volatility? So let me raise your hands. I think if this volatility has crossed your work, or in your lives, is volatility new to most people, or is it, how can I count this show of hands? Is there a way to count the show of hands? Probably not. But let me glance through the people and see in attendees. So I don't see a lot of hands. I think so. Okay, so maybe it probably makes sense to define that. So the volatility is really, like if you have dealt with a price return series in your journey so far, it's also called standard deviation. So you can basically take like a mean of that series or any time series, and then if you take the difference of that mean from each of the number and kind of calculate a squared standard deviation, squared deviation from that mean. So so normal distribution. Okay, normal distribution probably everybody's familiar with. I doubt that normal distribution has escaped from most of the people's memories. So normal distribution, if you think of normal distribution, it obviously has a mean and a standard deviation, they used to call it, right? Like if you have a mean of, let's say, if you think about height of adults in India, and you have a mean of that distribution as let's say, 5 feet and 5 inches. So what is the standard deviation of that series? You can calculate that, and any stat package or a regular stat package would do that for you. So that standard deviation of any price return is called volatility as well. Now, a lot of people actually think that volatility is not a measure of risk. And so that's where I was going to go with volatility, that volatility is usually thought of as a risk measure. Now, you may ask that, how is that a risk measure? And the answer is that if a stock price varies more than a a benchmark or an index, or let's say even if you compare two stocks, let's take two stocks. Let's say one of them is Apple and one of them is Google. Now let's say the Apple stock varies more than Google stock, then a lot of quantitative analytics or data analysis based on, which is done in asset management industries, they think of that Apple as more riskier than Google, just with that price volatility being higher. Now, is that odd to you? Let me ask that question. Is that odd to anyone who would like to volunteer to speak a bit? Is that odd, or is that normal, or you think this is acceptable? If I say a more the price changes for something, more risky it is. I invite anyone, panelists, students, someone wants to give some thoughts.
Students, if you want to interact, you can write in the Q&A box.
I think in Q&A, there are one or two questions, but later on, I think we can take up the question.
Sure.
My dear students, I think the topic today, which Vaneet Chadha is discussing, data analytics and financial segment, and very relevant. And he is discussing how data analytics it is relevant in the different fields. Particularly, he's talking about the financial segment because he belonged to asset management company Franklin Templeton, and definitely. Some of the students in case of MBA, they are pursuing their specialization as a data analytics. Further, all the BTech students, computer science engineering, as Vaneet Chadha is BTech from Delhi College of Engineering in 2005 and Master of Sciences from Georgia Institute of Technology, USA in 2008. So I think now later on, you can go with a lot of handholding with Vaneet with regard to the different techniques, tools, tactics, etc. being used for financial analysts. I am going through a few of the questions like mentioned, what are the key skills required for data analysts? Risk should be calculated. I think without risk we can't grow. What is the permanent loss of capital? Such questions, these are coming up. So I think Vaneet is elaborating how the financial markets, they are heavily relying on the financial analysts and how they are useful and helpful in decision making. So such and what is the procedure? What is the process? Whatever it is required in order to be a successful financial analyst. So during the interaction of next 30 to 40 minutes, I think you are able to know a lot of such kind of processes. So thank you so much, Vaneet, and I think Sandeep, which you can elaborate and you can take up a few questions later on.
Sure, sir.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Bagga sir. We appreciate those remarks. So I think one thing. Thank you for the questions, Surabhi, Harjeet, Prabhjit. Thank you. I think this is okay. I mean, probably like a good place to think about. So maybe let me take a step back, and I think the risk is, let me answer Harjeet's question. So risk is actually, like this is what I think a lot of people in data analytics in our industry suffer with, that the risk is really very subjective. There is no objective answer to this, right? It's now if I say that a risk of a given stock is higher than a different one, it is again like another analyst could say that, okay, I have looked at the income, the sales growth, how the sales have grown over the last 10 years, how the income has actually grown, how this company has actually built assets over time with a very lower debt. Like a debt is also a big measure of how much leverage a business can build in through financial engineering there. So it is obviously, one person can say the price volatility is not a great measure. Just because a market is trading a certain price uh, with higher sensitivity, why should a business be higher risk than that? So that's really where my explanation would be that it is not very easy to call what is risk and how do we calculate it. I mean, I think we probably have simplified, because when you give data to someone, right, you obviously want some objectivity. And so price volatility is where there's some objectivity to it. You can calculate a price volatility for any index or any stock, and that's why it's at least a starting point. I don't think it's a very bad starting point. It's a bad starting. It is okay starting point for measuring risk of a certain asset. I don't think it's a complete truth, or it's a holistic view of risk of any security or any asset. So hopefully that helps you, Ajit. Um, Permanent loss of capital, Prabjit, it's like, I don't know how much have you had experience with stocks, but think of, in a very, very crude sense, if someone starts a business, and a lot of people here have been to a store, right? You've been to a Reliance Fresh store, or like a grocery store nearby, or you have bought some shoes from a Nike store. So a permanent loss of capital is that if you invest certain money in your business, in any business, not your business, but somebody else's business, and you do not get that principal back. So meaning that, like, not just you don't get any return over horizon you have invested that money, but you even don't get your principal back. So that is where the permanent loss of capital comes in. And that's what the meaning of that is. The key skills required for the data analyst would be, I think, the one thing, and maybe this is where I wanted to gauge the audience, and forgive me, the panelists, if I take this conversation a bit. The one key skill I think required for data analyst is actually, I think, being able to program, even if it's a very basic programming skill, right? So I feel like the Python, MATLAB, are a lot of those programming languages are very powerful in helping you analyze data. So I think, in my mind, I think that's a key skill. But now I don't think that's stopping people, though, because a lot of packages now. So I don't know how is Dr. Sandeep, is it okay to assume that most people are familiar with Excel, Microsoft Excel?
Most of them are familiar with Excel, and even the students who are having MBA, they go through our in-house employability enhancement program, wherein we teach them the basics of Microsoft Excel, and to a certain extent, for the students of MBA, we teach them Tableau also, and it is a skill in one of the specializations.
So let me then tune my answer a bit. I think Microsoft Excel is actually a great tool to do data analysis. There are and I'm glad actually that management and the faculty, you are doing that training, because I feel Microsoft Excel is such an enhanced tool. And I think in Franklin Templeton, if there is one software which is used on every desk, it is Microsoft Excel, because there is so many things you can do, from a very simple a mean calculation or standard deviation calculation to a very complex you can think of like optimization as maybe a more complex problem to solve. So there are certainly a lot of things you can do in Excel. I was surprised. I did actually Excel training very early on in my career. And the first firm I joined, actually, which Sandeep mentioned, Citadel, they actually did make it mandatory for every one of us to go through Excel training. So Excel, so Surabhi, this is actually an easy answer for me. So Excel for sure should be a starting point for most of you. So thank you, Sandeep. I think that was very truly relevant. So let me then, I think so these are good questions, and please feel free to type it in. I may not wait for just my remarks. I may actually just check this window in a bit. So with that, so Sandeep, do you think this particular piece is more financial focused? You think I should probably go to the data paper more, data
You
decision
can
analysis?
skip to the other paper also, Vineet. I have read
I
that
see.
paper, and that covers more of data analytics and financial markets.
Okay, bear with me. Okay, great. So let's talk about the data-driven decision making. Um, I- as I said in my earlier in my opening remarks, why is data important? I think that's probably a question we don't have to answer. Hopefully, we all agree that data is important. What else would you do, right? The civilization has evolved a lot, and obviously a lot of people don't want to drive with their gut instinct. So if you want to become a little bit more analytical, you have to start with data. So this paper actually is quite an interesting paper. It actually has quantitatively shown how data driven decision making can actually affect firm performance. So sometimes I feel like we have certain hypotheses in our minds that, oh, data, obviously it has to be important, but this paper actually takes certain businesses, and it has obviously more than 100 large publicly trading firms. It tries to actually create a metric to measure that data driven decision making factor, and then it actually takes into a regression. Now linear regression hopefully is also something which is familiar, and by the way, that Excel can do that. A lot of linear regression, even some more complex regressions you do in Excel. So this actually does a plain linear regression and shows you how a data-driven decision making can actually explain um, a business output, or how a business output can be more if they do actually employ a DDD more than more than their peers, or more than a standard basket. So this was, I think, uh, quite interesting to me. I mean, hopefully it also creates some curiosity in your mind that how did they measure it? How did they actually, run that regression? So maybe I'll actually go through some of the results they have here, and I can obviously, we can keep it high level, or we can actually go into as much detail as anybody wants. I'm happy to do that, but let me just give you high level first, and we'll see if there are questions, we can go further into that. So I think this is really where I think the power of data driven decision making is visible. Now, what is the why on this? So if you have any linear regression, if people are familiar with it, and I really apologize if people are not, and some of you are not, I'll try to make it as simple as possible. But if you think of any linear regression of y equal to beta x, alpha plus beta x, and alpha is some constant you have in that regression, if in y in this case is log of sales. So what is the measure of any firm's output, right? It is sales is a very easy measure. Now you can call it revenue, a lot of people call it sales, and if you actually do a regression of that sales on a lot of things which people would say drives the sales, right? Like you think of material, you can think of capital, you can think of number of employees, how many IT employees are there, how many non-IT employees are there. So these factors, you would imagine, obviously have an impact. A simple example would be, I remember one of my back in Jalandhar, I think one of my uncles, my favorite uncles, he used to always complain that the business, I could have built a great business if only I had capital, right? So capital is clearly one place where most people think that you have capital, you should be able to build a business, but it's not as straightforward. So if I have to say that is more money lost by folks who think that running a business is as simple as capital, I think it won't be wrong to say. So then the next one becomes material, employees. So obviously human capital, right? So you have better employees, they can think of some innovative solutions for helping you to make a money in an industry you're trying to make money. So obviously employees can be a big factor as well. So that's the choice of these variables here: the material, capital, IT employees, and non-IT employees. And you can see there's whole chapters in this paper on how they define DDD. But for now, just think of this as a way of they've thought about how to measure data-driven decision making for a given firm. Either it is a use of certain softwares, either it is a rank metric based on a survey. There are a lot of different ways to do this. I think this paper actually used, I think, a survey to measure what is the data-driven decision making factor for a given firm. And you can see when you run that regression, there is so this coefficient, you see this number here. If this number has a lot of stars here, that means that number is significant. And usually, like there is a t-stat and a p-value associated with a mean, and that's really what this star 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 means. And there's a bracket which gives you a p-value. But let me just distill it for you. What this regression of this analysis tells you is that the data-driven decision making is actually an important factor. It is a non-ignorable factor, even accounting for some of the factors which people think are important, like material, capital, employees. So this is like a very quantitative, simple way of doing this. But I think I felt that this was actually a neat way of doing it. So let me stop there. And let me see if we have more questions on this, or maybe even like things about understanding this better, or like even any thoughts. I welcome any thoughts or any questions.
In the meantime, there is one question by Mr. Hardeep Singh that, so what about Tableau as compared to Excel for analysis?
Yeah, Tableau is also very good. I wasn't sure about the audience that Tableau is something familiar, but yeah, Harjeet, it's a good point. We actually do have Tableau as well in our firm, and we use it. I'm not a big user. I actually personally I use Python and MATLAB more. And that's because again I started my career off with those, so just the familiarity I have with them more than the software. But yeah, definitely handy software.
And Vaneet, what advice would you give to the students of? I'll split the question in two halves. One is for BTech and BCA students, along with MCA students. If they want to opt for a career in data analytics, what should they focus on? And secondly, the same question, if it is a question from MBA or a BBA student, that I want to become a data analyst for the financial segments or some other company also, because these days every company requires data analysts. Maybe you can call them financial analysts also if they're working on financial numbers. So the question is split into two parts. One answer should be for the computer science and IT students, the BTech, BCA students, MCA students, and the other one for MBA and BBA BCom students. Like there might be separate skill sets if you advise for both of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think my thought is that if I have to like say a common place, right? I think generally speaking, you have to have curiosity. I think is a big trait you need for first actually having a question in your mind, like, okay, why is this so, right? So I think that curiosity, it is, I think, very democratic curiosity, right? It can be a BCA, a BBA, MBA student. I feel like that one trait, I feel, is so important, because once you have that, right, you can always find the tools. You can use Excel, you can use Tableau, BCA, or other students here, they probably are handy with programming. They can use Python. They can probably simply write 5 lines of Python code, and you could probably spend 20 minutes setting that up in Excel, while Python could be much faster, tying that up in a loop or something. So I feel like to me, the curiosity is more important. Like, have you asked, like, maybe that's actually a great question in a sense, Dr. Sandeep, because I feel like that probably could be a feeding ground for some of the experiences students had. Is there a question in their mind which they have noodled with, and have they actually gone and looked at certain data? And by the way, if you didn't know this, we are such a blessed generation. that there is so much data out there. You just have to, sometimes I feel like Google it, and you will find troves of data to go through. I think in India, I probably like a less, my knowledge is less limited with US though. In US, there is like these central banks, like you have Reserve Bank of India, there is a Federal Reserve Bank in US. They have a website and they have historical data for so many macroeconomic variables, so many securities, assets, rates data, a lot of FX related data, exports, imports. I mean, you name it. It's such a data warehouse they have built, and they have it available for free for everyone. So you can imagine, like, if a curious kid comes and says, okay, I want to see, like, what is the reason that I always hear from politicians that, a lot of bads in US are because, we are a big importer. So let me see, like, what does the data say? So that could be a starting point. Like, how do you analyze the data is, I think, secondary. More importantly, do you have curiosity to analyze data? And it doesn't have to be everybody's calling, by the way. I don't think it has to be everybody's calling, because I meet kids, and sorry, I call kids sometimes because, there's some US culture thing, we call anybody who is a, undergrad or grad, we still call them, students or kids. So I think a lot of people actually, they have a curiosity. I feel like that's like a bare minimum for us actually. Sometimes if he has curiosity, we know he'll learn. He or she will learn and go find the way, find the data,
Absolutely.
find how to analyze it. Yeah.
Absolutely right, sir. I think now you rightly said this generation is really blessed in case if they want to excel in any of the area. So this is a wonderful opportunity. Reason being, lot of stuff available on Google and lot of resource persons they are available. They can reach out to various resources. Definitely one can excel. But the most important aspect which you highlighted, that is the curiosity. So that's why we have introduced few of the systems, like in case of management students, they are getting some of the IT skills, engineering students, they are getting some managerial skills, so that the multidisciplinary kind of approach that will help them to grow in different directions. So this is wonderful in case if students they take this initiative and having a lot of curiosity, definitely anyone can excel in any of the direction. So I would like to ask, sir, you being in as a man of engineering, and then coming to the financial aspects like multi-asset company. Now you are heading that multi-asset company. How you were able to understand the various terminology being used in financial terms like leverage, operating leverage, financial leverage, volatility. So whether it was out of curiosity and any other skill set being acquired in order to grab such kind of resources.
It's a great question. I think it's a great question in so many different ways. I think my personal journey has been that, I obviously, like all fellow Indian students here, we had certain push, right, from our parents and, society to do something with our lives. So I won't say I had a lot of curiosity in the beginning, but I think it eventually developed, and somewhere I think around, and I think I know the undergrad is a great time, by the way. I feel like people who are doing undergrad right now, BBA, BCA, and other courses, I feel like that's a great time when you have a lot of time to think. Eventually, I think there is obviously some pressure, right? A peer pressure, or society pressure, parental pressure. A lot of pressures come in undergrad. I think you have time to think of, where do you want to go with this, right? Where do you want to do with your life? And I think you can actually ask certain questions of, what do you enjoy doing most? And I think one aspect for me which was really interesting, like personally, given you asked that question, I feel like I'll tell that. I think my interest in programming was not there when I was doing my undergrad in computer science in DCE. Now I got the admission, but I did not have an interest. So in the beginning, I would basically, like not worry. I would do the bare minimum, what needs to be done, do the coursework, get, good marks, and hopefully at that time thinking about placement. What do I do without the placement? So a lot of those things happened. And I think eventually when I did my first job, so one thing I realized that you have to actually get some work experience, because when you do get into industry and
Yes.
you start working, that's when you employ certain skills you have, and you have to learn other skills, because you may not have those skills to do the job you want. And usually, like, you will, for your first job, I don't think they are giving you for anything or you can do. I think it's more about the potential. What can you do for them? Can you learn it? Can you show enough initiative to learn at the job, and then hopefully be productive in certain time period? So I think that's where really I see microelectronics, where my first job was. I think that's where really it got inculcated. Problem solving actually is what I think I really liked about it. Like, you could have, certain problem we were building, by the way, very boring. You probably all will run away right now if I tell you what my job was trying to build a embedded software for smartphones at that time. And we obviously failed, because you never heard of ST Microelectronics software. Once Apple and Microsoft, I think all the other big firms figured it out, we were trying to do it, but we couldn't really figure it out. But anyway, I think that aspect, at least, I think that's where I saw, okay, you can write certain piece of code and it can do something for you. You can see it in reality, what's going on. So that's where really I feel like programming, it became a little bit more interesting to me. And then finance, I think finance was more coming off of, I think I had a lot of personal interest in investing. And early on, I read, few books from Warren Buffett, Benjamin Graham, and that's where really I feel like that interest took off, and that's why I did my grad in US in financial. It's called quantitative and computational finance. So I felt that I could use my programming to analyze data and even use that for investing. So that's really where so obviously my first step was not, my undergrad was not really, I think, very thought through, but the second step was. And that I owe it to where I worked my first job. So I feel like, yeah, hopefully, if you have not figured it out, don't worry. No, most people don't figure it out at your age, but hopefully when you do your first job, spend a year or two, hopefully some of the alarm bells are ringing in your head that what do you want to do. Sorry for that long answer, Dr. Bagga, but it was just such a great question that I couldn't resist.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. So I think various questions, they are appearing in Q&A. Ranjanji, you can take out few questions.
Yeah, sure. I think I can. So various steps. I think let me answer the steps on the analyst project. I think again, I feel like you have to phrase a question first. Like, what's the coming from curiosity? What is your question first? So let me. If Sandeep, you have a better example, please do. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, I think so. COVID is quite topical. So maybe people are more interested in hearing this. So let me ask this question. I wish we could do actually a poll as well. There is a way to do a poll in my technology is so limited though, Sandeep. But I was thinking that in the COVID, right, in the COVID crisis we are in currently, let me ask you, to all the students and panelists, how many of you think that this is a way to figure out how bad it is, right? So if I ask a question, okay, how bad is it in India right now? How do we measure that, or how do we think about that? What if I ask that question? Okay, degree of bad. Let me say degree, because obviously bad is very subjective. Is it very bad compared to last year? Is it very bad compared to last month? If I ask that question, what would you do as a first step? So let me ask you, it's Surabhi, I'm not trying to evade the question. I'm trying to actually make you all think, because I can give you a cookie cut answer, but I want you to think. So think about, what would you do if I ask a question? I have to measure the degree of badness of COVID right now in a certain region, a certain country. What would you do in that, if I have to answer that question? What would be the first step?
Vaneet, may I answer? May I try to answer?
Yeah, please do.
Like you said, how bad the situation of COVID is. To me, it would be like where I would try to fit in my answer. If I look at the website of Johns Hopkins University and try to figure out the ratio of the fatality, So India is having a much lower fatality. And yesterday I was reading about Micronesia, Vanuatu, and some other countries which only so far have a single case. There I feel bad that we are at number two. So it's all about analysis. If I compare it with Brazil, the overall population, which is much lesser, and the cases are almost similar, it's quite happy that we are tackling the situation in a right way. But when I compare it with Bhutan or any other country like Vatican City, which are favorite tourist spots, but they have shut down their business, and that's the right thing that they have done and prevented the country from these things. So it depends where I fit in my question. Like if I compare with the GDP facts, like the overall industrial production, then the numbers are somewhat else. If I compare it with unemployment, the numbers are somewhere else. So it depends on what I want to make out of this analysis. What are my hypotheses before I begin this analysis?
Yeah, great,
I think,
great, Sandeep. I think you improved the question. I see, like this is why um, even the phrasing the question can be very important. So you pointed that out, right? Like degree of awareness in terms of in terms of human loss, in terms of deaths, is it in terms of economy? Is it in terms of a certain industry like tourism, which is impacted, or is it small businesses or big businesses? Some of them are COVID proof, like Amazon, Google. They have actually done quite well in this environment. I agree. So thank you for saying that. So obviously, Surabhi, one thing you learned from this is the question has to be framed properly. But let's say my question was ill formed. But let me make it more specific. The human loss. Let's say I'm trying to measure in terms of human loss how bad it is, and that goes to the first step. Then what Sandeep you mentioned already, you could probably go to a Johns Hopkins University data. There are other websites as well. You could find the data, time series data, of what the deaths were 11-12 months ago, February or March of 2020 when it started, and what are the number of deaths reported today, or let's say whatever the last data point is. And that step of first having the data is really, and that's just one set of data, by the way. You can even start with multiple data sets. So Surabhi, if you're listening, if you can start with number of cases, right? How many number of COVID cases are reported? You can start with number of deaths being reported, because there's a lag between those, right? If you imagine today you have a infection rate of 1,000 people. Now those 1,000 people are going to be infected for a few weeks, and then some of them will, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to dehumanize this. I'm sorry if I took that example, but there's going to be people who are going to be unfortunate and maybe struggling and fighting and then eventually die. So the deaths are going to be always lagged. Deaths you see today are coming from infections from time before. So you see, there is this, once you ask the question, you can get into those, like, okay, is the measure a death, or maybe it is actually the measure is the number of cases of COVID positive tests which are coming out, because that may lead how many deaths are going to be in future. So this is where I feel like the first step is always like, okay, what data sets could be helpful to answer that question? And sometimes one data set is not enough. You may have to have multiple data sets. I can even think to take Sandeep's suggestion, you could even think of a certain mobility index. So one thing in US, what they do is they measure the mobility, like the number of autos on the road. The more the number of autos means that the mobility is quite healthy, and that means either the spread is going to be high if the number of cases are going high at the same time as the mobility. That means you are going to be actually going higher for a longer time. Or the other thing could be there is a fear and the mobility is actually low, meaning people are not moving a lot. People are actually sitting in home. They're actually locked themselves down. Or there has been some regulation, because a lot of cities have actually tried, countries have tried to lock you down. So that mobility can even tell you where we are in terms of spread, which could again be a leading factor, right? The mobility could be a leading factor of what the next step is going to be. So things like that, I think hopefully that helps you with the first step, the data sets, which would be helpful. The second step is obviously thinking about, how are you going to think about that, answering that question. maybe you actually run a regression of like my suggestion on number of deaths or the mobility, to see like which one is leading, which one is lagging, which one can actually give you a better sense of how the degree of badness is for a COVID at certain period of time in terms of human loss. So that can lead to certain processing steps. The second step could be a processing step, or certain regressions you run. And then finally, obviously, the third step could be where you make some conclusions. So I simplified it a lot. I mean, there could be different for different complex problems, but hopefully that helps. And again, like I said, you ask those questions, it will actually raise the quality of our discussion. So thank you for that question. Take on Franklin Memory Crisis. I mean, that one is, I think, it's I mean, there's probably like some luck involved. I'll probably keep my comments short. That there was some some illiquidity issue with certain products and certain funds Franklin Templeton was managing, and I think it's probably in the courts right now. And there are certain, obviously, do certain processes need to happen before the investors get their money back, and the money is unfrozen. But I can tell you from my personal experience, and this is not just because I'm working for Franklin, this actually I think I can probably say safely, even when I'm not working here, if I don't work here, I think they are very respectable firm. They actually, I think they are in business for 70 years, and there's not a lot of businesses who actually survive for 70 years. So one way you survive for more than 70 years is actually by doing the right thing. And what that does mean is that you don't try to dupe your clients or dupe your stakeholders, employees, and other stakeholders in your places. So that's where I think I have definitely certainly confidence that it's obviously a very serious matter in India, I know, and probably a lot of people had a lot of pain with this, but I feel like they have the right people to control this crisis. So I'm not worried. I think we are a lot of long-term thinkers here. Even our Indian business head, I remember he said that it's probably like a big patch of time where things can probably be slow, but eventually I think they'll come out of this. And then I think the inquisitiveness is a prerequisite before entering into data analytics field. Yes, I completely agree. Can't agree with that more. So yeah, if you don't have the curiosity, I think then you probably will struggle even if somebody else asks the question, right? So a lot of times when I'm doing some projects, if I have peers and I have subordinates who like the question I phrase, like why is, let's say, a simple question could be, and it's actually very topical for your Indian stock market. I mean, economy is suffering, right? Still, why is the stock market, why the businesses are valued higher and higher, even though the economy is behind? So that's a simple question, right? It's and so many different ways you could actually try to answer that question. So as an analyst, at least in financial setting, a lot of times you have to be, if not inquisitive by yourself, if somebody else asks the question, you should actually be inquisitive enough to run with them, to analyze them with them, to ask more questions, to even improve, like how Dr. Sandeep did just now in real time. By the way, there's no preparation for this call. We actually had a brief chat about this, and we thought about you students, how that would be helpful. So this was really, I think, how he was thinking, that he asked certain questions or certain thoughts which improved the question, right? So that's where I feel like the inquisitiveness, it doesn't have to be initial idea, but at least if somebody else says idea, what are your thoughts on that? So a lot of different levels of, I think, inquisitiveness, but clearly there's a prerequisite in my mind. Okay, so let's I think switch gears a bit. So here's one thing I was gonna also get a sense, and maybe Sandeep, you can help me in terms of the programming experience. So obviously Excel W is a good one. Are there like a lot, the undergrad students, do they have a lot of programming courses as well? I think BCA probably does, but does other programs also have some introductory programming course in the school?
In our BTech and BCA, we have hardcore programming courses like C, Java. Recently, the last 1 or 2 years, we have Python also. And in MBA course, there is R is there. And apart from the curriculum which is being taught, because we are bound by the university, which is IKG, Punjab Technical University, if you remember, which is there in Kapurthala. So apart from the syllabus which is given to us by the university, we also have some in-house employability enhancement programs wherein we teach the courses which cover a wide range of programming languages. So they depend on course to course and program to program. Like in some masters, like the PG classes over we have some specializations. Like I'm teaching one of the MBA specialization, which is data analytics. So over there we have Tableau. Last semester we had data analytics. So these days more and more courses are bent towards Python, R, MATLAB, data analytics, and everywhere we have at least Microsoft Excel. That's a core to start. So almost everybody is familiar with Microsoft Excel. Now it depends on the inquisitiveness of the student. What else can I do? Like there are some plugins for Microsoft Excel also. Node Excel is there. Some sentiment analysis plugins are there. So wherein you can just upload a CSV file and do whatever the function allows you to do. So there's a drag and drop feature also in Excel. You can have some plugins. So students are working with that also. So even if they don't have any programming experience, they can still use the tools like Node Excel. That's a tool for sentiment analysis.
That's great. So see, like I think hopefully, I think I know this is a little bit tangent here, but I think students, I think I definitely encourage you that you have a lot of tools, you have a lot of resources, you have very competent faculty. I feel like the onus is on you to do something with it, right? And I think the more training you self-training you do in these times, I think the better it is for you when you actually enter industry. And I'm not saying you have to work for someone, you can actually work for yourself. A lot of people, I think, I'm sure there are a lot of entrepreneurs amongst us. They're not visible plainly, today, but I think I have seen journey, at least I think Sandeep, you have seen the journey of all the kids, who were in a school, who were just being probably silly and naughty in their careers for a while, but then you give it 10 years, a lot of people actually have done good with their lives. I think it doesn't have to be just a great job. You could actually have done a lot more for lot more people, even building something on your own, right? So as an employee, there's always some limitation to what you can do or what lives you can impact. But I think I have a friend actually who had who went back after his undergrad and Mandi Gobindgarh, where his dad was running some small business, and he actually took that business in hands and really elevated it to a different level, which his dad, with his obviously like a knowledge of technology and knowledge of data, like I was talking about, a lot more skill set he learned, he actually applied it. So things like that, I feel like, and that reminds me of Three Idiots as well, how Amir Khan, I think that film, actually, I never really understood that movie very well. I think it's only like years later I understood the power of that movie. And if you haven't seen it actually, or if you have seen it before, I think you should look at it again. It's an entertaining movie, but at the same time, I feel like the whole message of that movie, what Amir Khan was trying to do, and I know it's a movie made on Chetan Bhagat's book as well. So yeah, read a book as well. If anybody's offended by my movie recommendation, please read the book instead. I think 5 Point Someone, I think if I remember the name. The message was that whatever you do it passionately, and other things will take care of themselves. There can be pivot in your career where you get a great opportunity, where there can be some things just materialize in your path. It doesn't, you can't like completely see it right now, but it will happen and you'll be ready for it because you have followed your passion and heart. So that message, I think, I won't say that I got it when I first saw it, but it does. I at least try to follow that today. I don't just go into my job every day to follow instructions and do some 9 to 5. It's really about like solving some problem, getting somewhere, and trying to learn every day still. because there's no substitute for learning. There are 90-year-old CEOs, and by the way, Warren Buffett, I know I named him. He's 90 years old, and he's still running Berkshire Hathaway, which is more than $500 billion worth market cap company. He's still as sharp as ever, and the reason is because he's still a big reader. He still reads a lot of books. He still reads a lot of balance sheets and statements. And by the way, that was never my passion. I couldn't actually. I tried to read a couple of times. I just couldn't do it. But I found my passion. This doesn't have to be somebody else's passion. It can be your passion. But all I'm saying is that there is no stopping. You student, you being a student today doesn't mean you can't be student after you leave the college. So please be that student who spends time on learning, on trying to find your way, and you will find your way. I think there's obviously, if you ask enough questions enough number of times, I'm pretty certain light bulbs will go off. So sorry about that tangent, but just wanted to encourage, even that all the tools you said, Sandeep, I feel like it wasn't true 15 years ago. We had all that, right? It was, no matter what college or school you were, I think the tools have definitely improved and enhanced.
Thank you so
Great, I know
much,
we are top of
Vaneet ji. हाँ जी, हाँ जी, please, Sanjay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Vaneet, I have a question for you. Basically, data-driven decision making, we generally discuss for the business applications, financial, and that all. Is it helpful for the education sector too?
Yeah, I think it can be a lot. I think I feel like probably, no, Dr. Gulwant, I think your question is actually quite relevant, because it's, I don't think we are doing enough though. We're not doing that enough today, but I do expect that, that probably could or should change. Now, I don't know, maybe you can actually give me personal examples if you are doing that in Apeejay already, but at least in my experience, and I have some experience because with my daughter, for example, I have a 5-year-old, and she some experience with school. I don't think they had done enough analysis in data to see, which students are from that school, because you have data, right? You have like, okay, what were the grades of the student in every class event, and you could even have like particular courses, right? You could have like an English grade, a math grade, a science grade. So there's all this data for each student, and if you are like a 40-year-old school, imagine how much data you would have gathered. You probably could have, if you had ever had a data analyst, you could have analyzed like, okay, what is more effective? What student actually showed, and there could be some qualitative, I know, obviously there's some qualitative aspects there, but I'm sure there's a lot of quantitative aspects to what teacher could make a difference. If this teacher was there for 5 years, most of our students had improvement in grade or not. That question, by the way, can be answered if you have the data, right? You can answer how much teacher was effective. And sometimes it's not I don't want to make that as a performance review for teacher, but it at least helps the teacher to get the feedback, right? And maybe they can actually change certain things around, okay, maybe they were very effective in a certain year because they had a certain style or a way of doing it. In a certain year, they did have a different style. So maybe that style worked in a certain year and did not work in a certain year. So I think we are having this conversation, Dr. Gulwant, about how the data is there, but it's not being used. Nobody has thought about it. And I know I'm thinking about elementary school. Probably people have bigger problems to solve than thinking about an elementary school kid. But like your college, you have plenty of data as well. I'm guessing a lot of data about students, about teachers, about the coursework they are taking, what are the careers they are, or companies or corporations they're joining. It should be, I would really support it, but I don't think, at least maybe from American standpoint, I don't think there's a lot of data analysis in education yet. Do you agree with me, or do you think you've seen differently?
Of course, I agree with you. Because in order to make future decision, you need the previous all components. And if you want to go for inequalities, or you want to check with respect to region or the country, but this data is missing.
Yeah, so I think you're right that probably I agree that maybe an institution may not be maintaining their data very well. But then if you think of an institution with a longer term horizon, you can actually start today, right? It's not something which we can make up for what has gone or what has happened, but you start today. In 5 years, you will have 40 students in one class. You'll have, a 200 student data in 5 years, right? So, and any stat analysis, I think it probably needs obviously minimum 30 data points, but 200 is enough to make certain conclusions. Even if you don't make certain conclusions, you can at least test certain hypotheses with that data. So I think I would encourage that, it's okay if we haven't done it. And that's what actually one of my comments to one conversation with our in our faculty in a school, that we don't have to stop ourselves because we haven't done it. We can think about future, and with time it can snowball. Dr. Gulmat, I think that's the power I feel like people miss sometimes, that it's time can be a friend.
Can I add something?
Sure, please.
Yes,
Please do.
Like we were discussing for the data analysis, I would like to add this, like Apeejay has already started this data analysis. Like Apeejay is a bigger group with 24 institutions all over India and one university and lot many schools. So they have already hired many data analysts and the customer relationship management analysis. So from last 2 or 3 years, the focus is on the analysis part, like all the institutions all over the India and what sort of students are coming in, what sort of students are going out, or what are the, let's say, for analysis of the employees as well. So we have been, we have started this like for from 2-3 years. Like the question I want to put is like, as you said that there is no age of learning. Like let's suppose if we consider the Indian education scenario, like somebody who is in the 10th standard. So what should be the career path or the growth path? Like suppose after 10th, let's somebody who has maths or science in 12th. So after that, he should be going for, let's say, BTech or BCA or BSc non-medical or something like that. If he wants his career to be as a data analysis, any of the bigger MNCs, like, or MBA would be the basic.
Yeah, I think Kamal, you're right. I feel like I do think that given how the importance of data and technology has increased in our lifetimes, it's probably hard to imagine that you do not want to touch upon certain aspects of that, right, in your education. And I that's why I think my question earlier was, hopefully we like, it looks like, gives me an impression that you already do, but every coursework should have some aspects of it touched upon. A simple data analysis, where it could be a simple Excel tableau, data analysis, and it could be a simple programming language course as well. But if that's too much, I think Excel tableau is okay. I think it probably, you want to arm these students with that, and hopefully I think stimulate interest, because if it becomes a coursework again, I mean, we have enough coursework, enough children who are turned off actually to ask those questions, because it becomes burdensome for them. So that's what at least my feeling was. I feel like hopefully now that I have done what I have done in my life, I think I can safely say, at least I'm a proponent, and again, it's an opinion, not saying it is everybody's opinion here on the panel, but I think a certain emptiness in coursework in your college or school, grad school, is certainly very good if obviously students use it wisely. Now there are some moral hazard on if they actually waste time with video games and watching TV too much or other things which are not very productive. That's the problem, I know. So it's a very, very difficult question. I know I can't like be very idealistic about it, but I think to your question, I feel like we should engineer coursework such that they get that exposure to data technology, data analysis technology, so that even if they started with BBA or even a BA in arts, for example, right? They can actually have that background, and maybe it actually speaks to them. So maybe they do something with it, right? And I think, yeah, that's why I'm afraid to say that one course is it, right? Because we don't know, right, what the interest of a student is. But some aspects of that introduced in coursework, I feel like that's probably a must.
Thank you so much, Vaniji. I think beautifully you have explained a lot of questions with varied examples. And I think the conclusion can be the students, they must have the varied interests apart from the coursework, apart from the program, whatever they are pursuing. In case student is pursuing BBA or BCom or BCA or even the BTech or MBA program or MCA program. But definitely simultaneously that will depend upon the questions those are coming to their mind. And definitely, as stated earlier by you, in phrasing of your question, everything, it depends, means that whole process you can find out. So whenever you are thinking about your career path or something like this, definitely lot of questions, there must be war inside your brain, so that you are in a position to find a lot of queries. And beautifully explained, everywhere there are a lot of chances to go with your data and having analysis in a different format. One must be creative, one must be innovative, and a lot of activities being required. So my advice to all students, so definitely whatever the program, the coursework you are doing, but definitely simultaneously you must think about the relevant areas. For example, sir has taken example of COVID. So how the analytic part it is to be taken into consideration, what are the various questions to be framed, and out of those questions you are in a position to use different tools, techniques to find out your answers. So definitely in case one is pursuing even the BA arts, you can go with lot of data analysis total all over in India in a particular region with these subjects combination, etc. What kind of prospects, what kind of opportunities are available. So I think by having a lot of questions, you are in a position to frame your process. So that will be wonderful, sir. Really nice talking to you and listening throughout last 1 hour and around 10 minutes so far. Any panelist, in case if they are having any question or student in such a case, otherwise we can go up with the next proceedings. Thank you.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you, Dr. Bagga. So yeah, let's give it any more questions, or I think, yeah, I'd allocated one and a half hours, so happy to answer any questions, or yes, we can go on. Sorry, was there a question?
I think Sandeep, majority of questions are being taken up.
Sure.
So thank you, Vaneet. It was a very nice session from you, and you gave real life examples, and also you are sparing your time. It's almost 11:30 p.m. right now, and you're working from your home. Not really working, but interacting from your home. Yeah. And you spared your valuable time from your home, and we are all very lucky to listen to your words, and we will definitely we all faculty members will definitely work on these lines. And the students, I hope, will also listen up to your advice that we should spend more time on reading and inculcating curiosity in our minds, apart from the coursework which we are doing in the college. So yes, we must interact with whatever is going around us, and we always be job ready, or even if we want to start up our own company, we must be curious with what all is happening around us and looking for data everywhere, and moving in a very technical and logical manner, take the decisions according to that. So whatever decision we are going to take in our lives should be based on some data. That is my take from your lecture. So thank you, Vaneet, and on behalf of the management, Director Bagga sir, all the deans, Dr. Kulwant, Dr. Rajesh Bagga, Dr. Rajan Chaudhary, Kamal Khera sir, Professor Vijay Rai, all the learner faculty members, and on the behalf of all the dear students, I extend my thanks to you for sparing the time and giving us valuable insights into data analytics. And surely we will have more sessions with you. And whenever you come back to India to visit your hometown, and we would love to have you in the college.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm actually raring that everything opens up and we do a lot of things in person. Thank you so much for having me. And I think my preference has always been, I think, to give it back to society, to students, and to our teachers, to generally. I think I don't think I do enough, and this is one attempt at helping out and giving back. So thank you so much for having me, guys. Thank you.
Sir, last but not the least, in case if you don't mind, in case if any of the student they want certain sort of assistance or your mentorship, in such a case, whether Ranjan can share your email ID and contact number so that later on, in case any student want to pursue their career in case of data analyst or need some guidance or your assistance, so can be considered or.
Sure.
Sure, sir.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, like I think I could tell you that I'll try my best to to an extent I can, but I'll definitely try. Thank you so much for
Thank you
offering
so
that.
much, sir. Thank you so much.
Take care. Good night. Oh, good day for you guys. Good night
day,
for
sir.
me.
Good night, Vaneet.
Yeah. Bye.